Hello,
Hello, hi, good afternoon,
can you hear me
welcome.
now?
I can certainly hear you now, Catherine.
Oh, thank you.
Welcome, everybody, and apologies for the very slight technical issue that we were just trying to overcome. We've thankfully now overcome it. But welcome to the second in our series of monthly functional skills update webinars. For those that didn't join last month, we will be sending out a link to last month's webinar as well as this month when we send out the recording from today's session. For those that are joining us for the first time, welcome. As we've kind of indicated before, these sessions are really an opportunity for us to sort of share a little bit of what's going on at the moment, focus on a particular aspect of the reforms each month, and then also hopefully give you something tangible to sort of take away and help you on that sort of journey to the new functional skills qualifications next month. I'll introduce the whole team in a second. For those of you with us last month, there were two of us. There are now three of us, but I'll explain more about that in a second. What we'll also do is share kind of what's changed since last month, and the honest answer is not a huge amount, but we'll nevertheless sort of update you a little bit. But the main focus really of today's session was talking about getting ready for the new qualifications and helping you with some sort of tangible tips to help go through doing that. As always, you're welcome to pose any questions during this session. We can't promise to answer them all kind of immediately, simply because there are actually quite a lot of you on the line at the moment and actually just keeping track. However, what we are doing, we'll try and answer anything that's really sort of burning questions during this session, but anything else, what we will do is use to build the set of FAQs that we're in the process of putting together, that will appear on our functional skills updates page very soon. So that's really kind of a very quick introduction and overview. Time really to sort of make sure everybody's sort of awake or kind of with us. What I'm going to do is just share a couple of polls with you. I'll launch those now. The first question is, did you listen to last month's webinar? And we've got a few more seconds to go. I'll just bear with this. Anyone listening to the recording now, I do apologise for this being a little bit tedious because you can't vote. But so those on the line, looks like most of you have now voted, so I'll close that poll now. Looks like just nearly half of you joined us live last time. About 44% didn't, are hearing this all for the first time, and about 7% listened back to the recording. So thank you for that. The next one, just very quickly, another quick question. I'll just launch this quickly now. Are you signed up for the monthly email updates from those? And quite a high proportion of yeses here coming through, but still a few more of you to vote. And we'll give you 5 more seconds. I'll close the poll now. So quite a high proportion of you have, by the looks of things, about just over 60%. Some of you not sure. What we will do, though, certainly before we finish up today, is give everybody a quick reminder of how to do that if you haven't already. Just one more very quick poll just before we carry on, and I'll be very quick with this now. This is really, are you likely to review the awarding organisation you and I've spotted the typo there, first typo of the day, so apologies for that. The awarding organisation, your organisation works with functional skills as a result of the reforms. Getting a I appreciate in some cases you may not be in the position to make that decision or know the answer to it, but useful to have your perspective. Okay, I'm going to close the poll now. Thank you very much, everybody, and we'll go back to the. Hopefully, you can see the screen. Yeah, great. What I'm going to do now is introduce the team. I mentioned a second ago that there were 2 of us last month. There are now 3 of us. Thoroughly remiss of me, but I want to start by introducing myself. My name's Paul Seeney. I'm one of the now 2 technical advisors for Maths and English at City and Guilds. Our role is quite varied actually, but it is primarily around supporting colleges, training organisations, anybody and everybody who works with us doing Maths and English in any flavour forms. I spend roughly 2/3 of my time out with providers, with people like yourselves, hearing what's working and also sometimes hearing what isn't working, and crucially sharing that information with colleagues back at base. I've I won't say how many years experience within the Maths and English arena, but quite a few. But obviously been trying to sort of hold the fort across the whole country by myself in the recent past. So very, very pleased to welcome Catherine Cooper, who joined us just a couple of weeks ago as our second advisor. I'll let Catherine introduce herself properly now.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Catherine Cooper. As Paul stated, I'm a new team member here at City and Guilds. I'm currently a technical advisor, the same as Paul, for the Maths and English. I come from a background of FE and working within the OLAF provision, and the sectors that I'll predominantly be supporting are hair and beauty, construction, engineering and digital, although I will be linking with Paul on other sectors as well. I'll hand you over now to Amanda Kelly, our industry manager.
Good afternoon. Sorry, I'm leaning over Paul's shoulder, shouting into his microphone. So my position here at City and Guilds is industry manager, which means that I effectively own the qualifications for functional skills, but also our other maths, English and employability qualifications. And my role is more of a policy-facing one, in that I liaise between our stakeholders, so people such as DFE and Ofqual and the ETF, and at the same time working with Paul and Catherine to ensure that our customers' voices are heard as we're developing this particular qualification.
Great, thank you for that. I'll just add that I'm, as well as Catherine, looking after a number of particular vocational areas and working closely with our technical advisors responsible for those areas. I've also got a number of areas, and they include land and health and social care, and a couple of other areas. Building services is one of the others as well. To sort of move on, obviously conscious this was new to a lot of people last time, but I'm going to put Catherine on the spot by asking her to sort of give a quick recap of what we talked about last month. And Catherine, I know you've gone from being an attendee last month to a participant this month, so no pressure.
Thank you, Paul. So this is just a quick recap of what Paul and Amanda actually went through last month, and what was covered. So the new reform will be available for first teaching from September 2019, as we know, and there is distinct purposes between entry level and level 1 and 2. So at entry level, learners will need to demonstrate their underpinning skills, and there will be word lists. And at levels 1 and 2, learners will need to demonstrate they can apply skills in the workplace and within real life situations. Also a big change, dictionaries will not be permitted within the English writing assessments, and also there will be calculator and non-calculator assessments in maths, and that's at all levels. And I know awarding organisations are currently also seeking approval to offer new qualifications also.
Okay, thanks for that. I'll ask Amanda now to sort of do a sort of where we are at the moment.
The process starts with, once the content is released, is each awarding organisation has to create an assessment plan, which they then submit to Ofqual for agreement that the way that we plan to assess the new qualifications is satisfactory in their eyes. So obviously it would be very difficult if all awarding organisations submitted everything all at once. I think we create a logjam at Ofqual. So what's actually happening is we're submitting in phases. So at the moment we've submitted our initial assessment plans, and we're waiting for Ofqual to come back to us. Meanwhile, here at Base, what we're doing is we're working really hard to prepare the documentation for submission. Because in fact, what we have to submit is not just what we're planning to do, but examples of papers, question types, handbooks, mark schemes. So it's quite an intense process, and we're going through that now. And so far, we haven't heard anything back, but we're not anticipating hearing anything for maybe a month or so more, and then we'll know how much more work we've got to do. They might approve us straight away, in which case that'll give us a chance to sort of get ahead of the game and share things with you more actively. But it might be that it's a bit of to and fro, and we need to go back to them. So the other dates on this slide relate to the actual process for the existing qualification. So you might notice on our website it says last registration is actually sometime in 2018. We are in the process of amending that. Now we've received the absolute deadlines, and that will be updated in line with the requirements for us to close the existing functional skills to new registrations on the 31st of August 2019, and then launch the new qualification the following day, which I think is the weekend, I think we worked out.
It'll be a Sunday, won't it? Yes. So in practice it'll be the 2nd, I think, in reality, but yeah.
In the meantime, functional skills ICT, for those people who've still got an oar in that particular water, we will extend that beyond this date, because there is no intention at this point to close functional skills ICT. Paul.
Okay, thanks for that. I appreciate it. I mean, I think we're in a, and I mentioned that not a lot of change since last month. Quite a lot of work has been done behind the scenes in terms of developing our new assessments, and that quite intense work of toing and froing and getting things to Ofqual, getting kind of feedback from them will sort of continue over the next 2 to 3 months, which I know is a little frustrating, because I know sort of everyone's burning question is, when can we see the assessments, and we're not sort of obviously holding back from sharing those. We're keen to obviously let you get your hands on those as soon as possible, but obviously appreciate we've absolutely got to go through that process of getting them approved first, because the last thing we want to do is put out something and say, no, actually it's not going to be like that, it'll be like this. So we're kind of still working away at that at the moment. What I will do though is move on to what we have been doing in the last few weeks to kind of help with this journey. And this sort of graphic was really about us just trying to sort of, I think, read the mood out there, which is kind of understanding kind of how much is changing, how little things may need to change in practice, how much they may need to change in practice. Crucially, how do you make sure you don't miss out on anything really, really important? So we were very conscious that, particularly in the absence of actually having assessments and handbooks and definitive things that you can really say, this is what it's going to be, that there are at least the sort of opportunity to make sure that you're posing the right questions to yourselves, to your colleagues, to others that you work with, to make sure that you're as ready as you can be for when things kind of officially start next September. So we're kind of conscious that all of those questions, including things like RACI charts in terms of people that you would need to sort of consult with, inform, and etc. So what we've developed is a document, and you will get a copy of this document sent to you in the follow-up email that will be going out in the next couple of days. I'm saying it might help. I can't sort of pretend that it will be a magic wand and solve all of your problems in one go, but our it's really an attempt from ourselves to sort of help you with that self-assessment process of helping to understand, am I even asking myself the right questions, let alone have I got answers to them. We've broken it up into 4 sort of distinct steps or stages, and we'll do a quick kind of walk through those in a second. I would emphasize at this point that not all of these will be answerable immediately. There may well be a need to kind of add some further stages, steps and questions kind of over the next few months as things start to sort of become a little bit clearer. One thing I will say, and I will promise, is that we will keep referring back to this guide, and we'll keep reviewing it ourselves, and probably issuing updated versions of it over the coming months. But we will be, in the meantime, we were keen to make it available as early as possible to sort of help you with that journey of getting ready for changes. So as I said, the actual document itself, we'll send it out to you afterwards, but we're now just going to give you a quick run through of what's in there. Before I do that, I will just sort of, as a quick reminder, just say that if you've got any kind of queries that come into your mind during the course of the session, by all means type your questions into the questions box, particularly rather than the chat box, if that's helpful. We're getting quite a few questions coming through. Amanda's trying to sort of keep track of those as I'm talking, but hopefully and some useful ones coming through, I should emphasize too. We'll come back to those in a second, but just obviously going on to the document itself. What I'll now do is put Catherine back on the spot again and ask her to perhaps talk about the first part of the document.
Okay, thanks, Paul. So this is stage 1. So this is really looking at your own awareness and looking at, you know, are you self-aware? So what things do you need to consider? What do you actually understand? Are you familiar with the actual subject content for English and mathematics? Or do you need to know where to go if you need more information, or if there's something that you need to do? So this is just about that. Also looking at, have you signed up for the monthly webinars and the email updates? And if not, do you know where to do that? So I'm not sure if everybody's familiar with this, but if you go to the web page of City and Guilds, if you scroll down to the bottom, you can sign up to these events and email updates, and you just click on those and you just put your information and sign up. Okay, so we'll then look at stage 2, and I'll pass you over to Amanda.
Who's frantically typing?
Frantically typing in the answer there. So Catherine Cook asked us what a RESI chart is. I'm just finishing it off.
I was desperately trying to remember the acronym.
That's one of the worst things about an awarding organisation. We do love our jargon, but it stands for responsible, accountable, consultative and informing. And it's just an acronym that allows us to think through a project when you are facing something new. What are the challenges and who will you need to involve? I think that's a really useful point for me to come on to the next bit of this readiness document, which is about sharing. So I know that on this call we've got lots and lots of people who are working in different parts of the organisation. So you might be a teacher at the coalface, or you might be a manager of a team, or you might in fact be quality or the lead for your organisation. And because everybody's coming from a different position, it's really important to make sure that the people around you are kept abreast of what's happening. We often, in maths and English, we tend to get carried away with the impact that it'll have on us, and particularly those of us who've taught, we tend to think about the teaching and the curriculum and what the lessons are going to look like. But actually we know that maths and English have a wider impact in any organisation. So when we're thinking about who needs to know what's going on, it's really quite important to think beyond the teachers. Obviously, senior leaders to be very closely involved with this process, but perhaps your colleagues who are teaching GCSE, maths and English, perhaps they need to be aware of the implications of the change of subject matter. Maybe we could persuade them to join these webinars as well. People who administer the qualifications in exams, it may be that there's going to be some changes in the way the qualification is managed, and so that's quite important. Internal quality assurers, they need to be aware of what's changing, particularly with speaking and listening and communicating. Once we have more information about how that's going to look, there's going to be a later webinar which focuses on English. That'll be really important for anybody who's got to manage the administration of these qualifications. And actually, not last but certainly not least, is our vocational colleagues, people who are teaching on the main programs that many of your learners will be attending, is actually they need to understand what the changes in functional skills mean to them and their learners, because ultimately they are their learners. So this page is quite useful for starting that thought process off. Paul.
Okay, I'll sort of canter through the sort of third and fourth stages, because they are to some extent a little bit further down the line, and I'm very conscious that in quite a few cases there are things that we probably need, well, I know that we will need to provide some more sort of some more detail on before we actually start sort of you're in a position to answer it yourselves, but I guess it's at least an opportunity to get you thinking about some of these things. So third stage was really focusing on the sort of operational side of things. So certainly thinking about some of the practicalities around initial and diagnostic assessment, the tools that you may currently use for those, and looking at how they may or may not be future-proofed in terms of the changes to the qualifications. Our own approval arrangements for the reformed qualifications, which we haven't, very conscious we haven't outlined yet, and that's something that's quite difficult for us to do that yet until some of the other sort of work around the regulatory side of the new qualifications has been resolved. But obviously there will be a process of granting approval for the new qualifications. We're certainly not looking to make that any more painful than it absolutely has to be, but nevertheless there'll need to be a process, and likewise obviously a mechanism by which we either give people direct claims status or transfer that across from the current qualifications. Again, obviously, when we finalise the assessments, we'll be able to clarify any changes to things like duration. We'll also be able to sort of give you some more detail around things like the non-calculator aspect of the maths assessment and how in practice that will be accommodated. A little bit to think about in the meantime also around the changes to English writing and the spelling and grammar checkers and dictionaries no longer being something that you're able to use. There's some practical issues around how you actually enforce that, particularly where learners are used to creating documents in Word. And also important not to lose sight of the fact that dictionaries certainly are still allowed for reading. And similarly for speaking and listening, some understanding some of the changes to that, and similarly any of the sort of operational differences with the entry-level assessments. The one that immediately sticks in my mind is the word lists that will be a feature of the English assessments in future. So on the operational side, you have the sort of those things to think about. From a sort of planning and implementing, again, these are things that I guess a lot of these will sort of start to sort of clarify once we've got sort of all of our handbooks and other documents sort of in a position where we can start sharing those. But obviously, absolutely crucial that you're sharing and getting access to those and getting to grips with those as soon as they're available. From a sort of program planning point of view, probably important to think about implications for the wider program that learners may be following, whether that's an apprenticeship or a study program, and understanding obviously the implications of the changes. The changing relationship between functional skills and GCSE, for that matter, also is a consideration there. In that may well some of the assumptions that have gone previously around sort of the term stepping stones versus kind of functional skills being seen as an alternative to GCSE may prompt some different conversations about how the two might be used in each other. Briefings and CPD likewise, I mean, obviously we'll be continuing to sort of provide a sort of package of support to sort of help you through those changes over the next sort of few months, but obviously looking at particularly colleagues from the Education Training Foundation in terms of any workforce development that they're doing, and also other support that might be available, and making full use of what's there. I'd always say, although this is quite a big change, there is a lot that isn't changing, and a lot of very good practice that's established and will still be absolutely relevant to the new world after next September, particularly the concept and any experiences you have in embedding and contextualizing the teaching of maths and English within, alongside and with other subjects, and similarly thinking about some of the other qualifications that we offer alongside functional skills, such as our sort of bite-sized units. They certainly are will be continuing alongside this suite, and there may well be some reappraisal of where they may prove to be a better fit, or where functional skills may prove to be a better fit. So a lot to think about there. As I said at the beginning, these are things that I wouldn't expect anybody to be able to answer fully at this stage, but at least it poses some of those key questions. Which leads us on to staying in touch.
Okay, so staying in touch. We have our monthly webinars, as you all attended this one and hopefully attended last one. You will get a reminder to email to you, and it's worth looking at your colleagues around you or anybody that you might know might benefit actually from attending these webinars also. Each one will have a theme and it will be recorded. Are you signed up to our email alert? And also, again, asking your colleagues or anybody else in the industry, you know, your peers or any other colleagues you might be working with, you know, that might benefit from signing up from these alerts or events. And also by keeping up to date on keep checking our functional skills page. That keeps being updated as well. So coming soon, questions and answers. We're still building these, so it's in process. From last month's webinar, we will include this one, and also with anything else that we are hearing along the way. We are also currently building our Maths and English blog. There'll be more about that next month. Networking events. We have next month's webinar, Wednesday the 24th of October at 3:30. And also, we continue to have general events for Maths and English. And again, I'm going to say it again, ensure that you've signed up for our alerts to receive details of this.
It's probably worth me, interrupting Catherine. We had a question. Somebody was saying that they attempted to sign up for email updates and the link wasn't working. You may have noticed, if you've been on our website this week, that we've got a flashy new website, but we have been told that one or two of the links are broken. So I'll take that away and talk to the IT team to make sure that link is working to allow everyone to sign up.
Yeah. What should work are one of two ways into that screen, and one is sittinggirls.com/updates, which should take you straight, in theory, should take you straight to the page, and that may be a link that we may need to check is still working. The other thing that should work is if you go to the bottom of any Sitting Girls web page, you will always see you'll see various things like links to Smart Screen, Walled Garden, but you'll also see a link marked email updates, and that likewise should take you through to the sign up page. You do have to go through a process of selecting your areas of interest, and obviously for this purpose it's crucial that you sign up. You tick functional skills as one of your areas of interest, and the wider Maths and English field as well, preferably.
The advantage of that is we don't bombard you with everything, so it's worth doing that. Just in terms of questions, the majority of questions are things that we will be including in our frequently asked questions. So, for example, you get a copy of these slides. We will post an email to you in the next few days. We'll have a copy of the deck with you and the Readiness document.
There's a nice glossy version of it that you'll get, kind of with that sort of nice glossy PDF at least.
We're receiving quite a lot of questions about the impact of removing spell checks and grammar checks and dictionaries, particularly for learners who currently have access arrangements. We are planning to do subject-specific webinars, and by then we're hoping that the picture will be much clearer, so we'll be able to give you some definitive feedback. But to be fair, we have been told that spell checks and grammar checks will not be available for any candidates. That's the initial stage that we're at now.
yeah, the sort of position is that this will be a feature of the qualification going forward. So it's if they're kind of banned, they're banned for everybody, if you like, which on one sense is a leveler, but I guess also could in some cases cause some challenges. The other thing that we'll have to reimagine or rethink a little bit in the strength of that is how we allocate marks, because at the moment we're awarding marks on the assumption that learners have got access to all of these things. In future, they clearly won't. That's not to say that we'll be kind of setting a pass mark of a particular number or making a particular account of that, but I guess clearly if we're evaluating the capabilities of a typical level 1 or a level 2 learner, we're making judgments about their performance. The judgments are obviously going to have to take into account what they have got access to in future. Obviously, I can't tell you how that will translate in practice, but clearly we'll need to work that through. And certainly when we do a more focused session on English, I'm sure we'll cover that in more depth.
We've had a question about guided learning hours. That's still up in the air. There has been some talk about extending guided learning hours to take account of the fact that it's a slightly bigger qualification, but as yet that's still under negotiation, so we don't really have anything to share with you. And a lovely question here from a colleague who is teaching, a GCSE colleague who is teaching learners from a hospitality background. I think the more embedding of maths and English you can do in a learner's vocational area, the more chance they have of grasping those skills in a maths and English classroom. So I would say go for it. I think I've probably either replied to most of these questions or just mentioned them briefly. What we will do is take these questions away and add them to our FAQs, which hopefully we'll be in a position to share with you ahead of the next webinar.
Yeah. So just remains to really say thank you again for giving up part of your Wednesday afternoon or whenever you happen to be listening to this, if you're listening back to it later on. As we said before, the functional skills updates page is something that we can't sort of strongly enough say it's important to kind of keep an eye on. There's a link to it, and certainly when you get the electronic copy of these slides, that link should take you straight through to the web page. But if not, you can just go to the Maths and English landing page and then follow the links through to the functional skills updates page. There's also, I haven't mentioned it, but again, just does no harm to remind you that there's also a dedicated email address if you've got anything particularly that you'd like to ask us in the meantime. Don't wait till next month if there's anything that's really burning as a question about the reforms. Would say that this mailbox is specifically questions relating to the functional skills reforms. If you've got sort of general operational or other questions about the current functional skills qualifications, we'd still ask that you go through our normal customer service channel for that. If you're on social media, it was great to see people tweeting about last month's session, but if you're on social media, by all means use the hashtag FunSkills2019, fun skills, because it will all be fun. And if you want to take part, you can follow Amanda and myself as well if you're so minded to do so as well. So that probably just remains for us to say thank you and I guess we'll halt to today.
And we look forward to joining us next month.
Absolutely. Okay, thanks everybody, and we'll say goodbye.